The Negev Desert, 1985. The silence here is not natural. It is enforced. Beneath the shifting sands and the blistering sun lies the Dimona Nuclear Research Center, a facility that officially does not exist in the capacity the world suspects. Machon too. This is the heart of the beast. Inside, the air is recycled, cool, and sterile. The hum of centrifuges is a constant, subsonic vibration that settles in the teeth. Mordecai Vanunu stands at his station. He is a technician, a cog in a machine built to ensure the survival of a nation surrounded by enemies. He is also a man whose conscience has begun to bleed into his work. In the pocket of his windbreaker rests a Pentax camera. It is a simple consumer device, wholly inadequate for the gravity of what it is about to do. Yet it is the only weapon he has. The facility is in a shift change. The security protocols are rigorous, designed to detect metal, radiation, and fear. But they are operated by humans, and humans are creatures of habit. Vanunu has watched the guards. He knows the blind spots. He knows the 30-second window where the corridor is empty. He checks his watch. The second hand sweeps past the 12. He moves. This is not a movie. There is no soundtrack, only the squeak of his rubber soles on the linoleum. He enters the separation hall. The scale of the operation is visible here. The gold-plated spheres, the control panels with their blinking constellations of lights, the raw, undeniable proof of plutonium extraction. He raises the camera. His hands are steady, a result of adrenaline overriding fear. Click. He winds the film. Click. He captures the gauges. Click. He captures the glove boxes used to handle radioactive material. 57 times he snaps the shutter. 57 frames that will strip away the policy of nuclear ambiguity that Israel has carefully cultivated for decades. He hides the camera. He walks out. The sensors do not scream. The guards do not tackle him. He passes through the checkpoints, sweating not from the heat, but from the weight of the rolls of film in his sock. He has just committed treason. He has just signed his own death warrant. He leaves Israel, not as a fugitive yet, but as a tourist, carrying the most dangerous luggage on the planet. He travels to Greece, then to Thailand, drifting, letting the distance grow between him and the desert. Finally, he lands in Australia. In Sydney, he tries to disappear. He drives taxis. He washes dishes. He converts to Christianity, seeking redemption or perhaps just a new identity in the eyes of a different God. But secrets like his have a half-life. They decay and they emit radiation. He meets a freelance journalist, Oscar Guerrero. He talks. He shows the photos. Guerrero sees dollar signs. Vanunu sees the truth. The information begins to move. It travels from Sydney to London, landing on the desk of Peter Huhnam at the Sunday Times. The editors are skeptical. The story is too big, the implications too catastrophic. Is this a hoax? Is this a plant? They need the man. They fly Vanunu to London. They put him in a safe house. They begin the grueling process of verification. Nuclear experts are brought in. They look at the photos of the gold spheres and the control panels. Their faces go pale. The calculations are done. This isn't just a bomb. This is an arsenal. Israel is the world's 6th nuclear power. The story is ready to break. But in the shadows, another story is already unfolding. The Mossad does not sleep. The leak has been detected. The intelligence machinery in Tel Aviv wakes up with a start. A red notice is issued. The Prime Minister, Shimon Peres, is briefed. The damage assessment is apocalyptic. If this story runs, sanctions could follow. The strategic balance of the Middle East could collapse. The order is given: bring him back. But there is a complication. Vanunu is in London. The British government, led by Margaret Thatcher, is an ally. A kidnapping on British soil, a wet job in the streets of London, would be a diplomatic disaster. The Mossad cannot use force. They cannot use a gun. They must use a lure. They need a psychological profile. Psychologists dissect Vanunu's life. They see the loneliness. They see the conversion to Christianity, the rejection of his family, the isolation in a foreign city. He is arrogant, yes, but he is also desperate for connection. He feels abandoned. The strategy is decided. They will not hunt him. They will make him come to them. Enter the honey trap. The operational team is assembled. At the center is Cheryl Bentov, codename Cindy. She is not a femme fatale from a Bond movie. She is better. She is an American-born agent, plain-looking enough to be approachable, attractive enough to be desirable. She is trained in the art of listening, of mirroring, of becoming exactly what the target needs. She flies to London. The surveillance team tracks Vanunu. They know his routine. They know he wanders the streets, bored, anxious, waiting for the article to be published. The Sunday Times has him hidden, but he is restless. He slips his handlers. He goes to Leicester Square. He stands by a shop window watching the crowds. Cindy is there. She bumps into him. It is a masterpiece of tradecraft, a collision engineered to look like fate. She engages him. She is an American tourist, she says, a beautician on vacation. She is lost, or maybe just bored. Vanunu, starved for conversation that isn't about plutonium or treason, bites. They talk. She suggests coffee. They sit. For the first time in months, Vanunu feels like a man, not a source. Cindy listens to him. She laughs at his jokes. She doesn't ask about his past. She creates a bubble of normalcy. The surveillance team watches from a distance, unseen. The hook is set. Over the next few days, they meet again. Vanunu is falling. He trusts her. He tells her about the newspaper, about the waiting. She plays the role of the sympathetic ear perfectly. But time is running out. The Sunday Times is nearing publication. The Mossad needs to move him. They cannot grab him in London. They need to get him to a jurisdiction where the rules are looser. Italy, Rome. The plan is formulated. Cindy complains about London. The rain, the noise, the expense. She mentions her sister has an apartment in Rome. It's empty, she says. It's free. Let's go there, she whispers. Just for a few days. We can be alone. Vanunu hesitates. His handlers at the newspaper have warned him. Do not trust anyone. Do not leave the city. But the logic of the lonely heart overrides the logic of survival. He looks at Cindy and sees a future. He looks at the newspaper and sees only stress. He agrees. They buy tickets. British Airways to Rome. The trap is primed. September 30th, 1986. They board the plane. Vanunu feels a sense of relief as the wheels leave the tarmac. He is escaping the pressure cooker of London. He does not know he is flying into a cage. The flight is uneventful. They land at Fiumicino Airport. The Italian sun is warm. They take a taxi. Cindy gives the address. It is not her sister's apartment. It is a safe house prepared by the Caesarea unit, the Mossad's Special Operations Division. The taxi weaves through the Roman traffic. Vanunu is relaxed. He holds Cindy's hand. They arrive at the building. It is nondescript, residential. They take the elevator. They walk down the hall. Cindy unlocks the door. She steps inside. Vanunu follows. The moment the door clicks shut, the illusion shatters. Two men are waiting. They are not burglars. They are professionals. They move with terrifying speed. There is no conversation, no interrogation. Vanunu is grabbed. He tries to shout, but a gloved hand clamps over his mouth. A syringe is produced, a sedative cocktail calibrated to incapacitate but not kill. The needle pierces his skin. The room spins. Cindy stands back, her face changing. The warmth is gone. The mask drops. She is an agent again. Vanunu's last conscious thought is the realization of his own stupidity. He slumps to the floor. The team moves fast. They cannot keep him here. They need to get him out of Italy before he is reported missing. A stretcher is ready. A story is prepared for any curious neighbors. A medical emergency, a sick friend. They carry him out to a waiting van. The van speeds towards the coast. At a small marina, a speedboat is waiting. The transfer is made. The boat cuts through the dark waters of the Mediterranean. Waiting offshore in international waters is the INS Noga, an Israeli merchant vessel that serves as a floating base for intelligence operations. The rendezvous is precise. Vanunu, bound and drugged, is hauled onto the ship. The engines roar. They turn east, back to Israel, back to the desert. In London, the Sunday Times realizes their source is gone. Panic sets in. They publish the story. On October 5th, 1986, the headline screams across the world. Revealed, the secrets of Israel's nuclear arsenal. The photos are there. The gold spheres. The control panels. The world is stunned. But the man who revealed them is a ghost. He has vanished from the face of the earth. For weeks there is silence. Rumors swirl. Was he killed? Did he defect to Russia? Then the confirmation comes, but not through official channels. Israel admits nothing. Vanunu is in a cell in solitary confinement. He is subjected to endless interrogation. They want to know who else he told. They want to know if he sold the secrets or gave them away. He is put on trial. It is a closed trial. No press. No public. The charge is treason and aggravated espionage. The sentence is a foregone conclusion. But Vanunu has one last card to play. One last act of defiance. He is being transported to the courthouse in a police van. The windows are blacked out. The press is waiting outside, cameras trained on the vehicle, hoping for a glimpse. Vanunu knows this. He cannot speak. The guards will silence him. He cannot write a letter. He looks at his hand. He finds a pen. On his palm, he writes a message. He waits for the moment the van door opens. The flashbulbs pop. He slams his hand against the window glass. The image is captured. It is blurry, frantic, but legible. Vanunu hijacked in Rome, Idle 3986. The world sees the message. The Mossad's narrative of a voluntary return is destroyed. The kidnapping is exposed. Italy is furious. Britain is embarrassed. But the deed is done. Vanunu is back in the box. He is sentenced to 18 years. 11 of them will be spent in total solitary confinement. The lights in his cell are never turned off. He is forbidden to speak to the guards. He is forbidden to meet with anyone but his lawyer and family through a glass partition, with agents listening to every word. The psychological pressure is immense. They want to break him, to ensure he has no more secrets. But the damage is irreversible. The genie is out of the bottle. The world knows about Dimona. The world knows about the bomb. And the world knows that the Mossad will go to any length, cross any border, and use any deception to protect the state's deepest secrets. The story of the honey trap becomes a legend in the intelligence community, a warning to whistleblowers everywhere. Trust no one. Not the journalist, not the priest, and certainly not the woman who smiles at you in Leicester Square. The operation was a tactical success, but a strategic complex. It reinforced Israel's deterrence. Look what we do to traitors. But it also solidified the country's status as a rogue nuclear state in the eyes of critics. The legacy of Vanunu is not just the photos. It is the precedent of the kidnapping. It showed that for the Israeli security establishment, the ends always justify the means. The Cindy agent returns to Israel. She lives quietly. Her name is eventually leaked, her cover blown by vengeful journalists years later, forcing her into her own kind of hiding. The hunter becomes the hunted. The cycle of espionage continues. But back in 1986, as the Noga steamed towards Haifa, the mission was accomplished. The leak was plugged. The whistleblower was silenced. And in the cool, sterile corridors of Mossad 2, the centrifuges kept spinning, processing the uranium, indifferent to the human drama playing out in their name. The facility remains. The ambiguity remains. The desert silence returns, heavier than before. This operation, known internally as Operation Mifza, was not merely an abduction. It was the assertion of sovereignty that extended beyond physical borders. The legal implications were staggering. International law was violated on multiple fronts. Kidnapping in Italy, drugging a civilian, unauthorized transport across borders. Yet, the geopolitical fallout was managed with icy precision. The Israeli government calculated that the outrage would be temporary, but the message of deterrence would be permanent. They were right. The Western powers, while publicly dismayed, privately accepted the status quo. Israel was a stabilizing force in the region, and its nuclear capability, however unacknowledged, was a part of that stability. Vanunu's revelation threatened to force the Arab states into a nuclear arms race. By neutralizing him, even brutally, Israel argued it was preserving peace. This is the cold calculus of statecraft. The human element, Vanunu's mental state, his moral crisis, was irrelevant to the machine. He was a glitch in the system, and the system corrected him. Inside the prison, Vanunu waged a war of attrition. He refused to speak Hebrew. He read the New Testament. He paced his cell, 3 steps forward, 3 steps back, calculating the volume of air, the hours of light. The guards were rotated frequently so they wouldn't form a bond with him. He was the man in the iron mask of the 20th century. His sanity frayed, but did not snap. He became a symbol for the anti-nuclear movement, nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize year after year. This attention was his shield. If the world stopped watching, he knew he would die. The Mossad watched the world watching him. They controlled his mail, his visitors. Every word he spoke was analyzed for hidden codes. Even after his release in 2004, the restrictions remained. He was forbidden to leave Israel, forbidden to speak to foreigners, forbidden to approach borders. He was a prisoner in a larger cell, the state itself. The story of Mordecai Vanunu is not over. It is a continuous loop of surveillance and resistance. But the pivotal moment, the hinge of history, remains that taxi ride in Rome. The moment he chose the woman over the warning. It is a testament to the power of human need. The most sophisticated security apparatus in the world did not defeat him with technology. It defeated him with a smile. Let's deconstruct the technical aspects of the photography itself, as this was the genesis of the entire operation. The Pentax camera Vanunu used was not a spy camera. It was bulky, relatively loud, and required manual film winding. This adds a layer of immense risk to his actions inside Mossad too. He had to physically frame the shots, check the lighting, and ensure the focus was sharp on the dials and schematics. The interior of the reactor hall was lit by industrial fluorescence, creating glare on the glass shielding of the glove boxes. Vanunu had to position himself at angles that minimized reflection while maximizing detail. He photographed the control room panels specifically to show the power output levels, which would allow physicists to reverse engineer the reactor's plutonium production capacity. He photographed the gold spheres, machined plutonium pits, which were the smoking gun of weaponization. A reactor for energy produces waste. A reactor for weapons produces pits. These images were technical blueprints. When he developed the film, he didn't do it in a darkroom in Tel Aviv. He carried the undeveloped rolls with him. This was a massive gamble. X-ray machines at airports in the mid-'80s were less powerful than today, but they could still fog film. He risked the evidence being destroyed before it was ever seen. The fact that the images survived the journey to Sydney is a miracle of probability. The involvement of Peter Haunam and the Sunday Times adds a layer of journalistic thriller to the spy narrative. The newspaper was risking its reputation. The Hitler Diaries hoax was a fresh memory in the publishing world. They could not afford to be wrong. They hired independent nuclear engineers to grill Vanunu. These interrogations were intense. The experts tried to trip him up. They asked about the specific chemical processes used to separate plutonium from the spent fuel rods. They asked about the cooling systems. They asked about the layout of the floors. Vanunu knew it all. He drew diagrams from memory that matched the theoretical designs of a heavy water reactor. He knew the flow rates. He knew the shift schedules. The experts were convinced. "This man is telling the truth," one physicist told the editor. "And if he is telling the truth, Israel has enough plutonium for 200 warheads." That number was the shockwave. Before Vanunu, intelligence agencies guessed Israel might have 10 or 20 bombs. 200 shifted Israel into the tier of a major global superpower, ahead of the UK and France. The stakes for the Mossad were not just about secrecy. They were about the geopolitical hierarchy of the world. The honey trap technique, or Mata Hari tactic, is one of the oldest in the espionage playbook. But its execution in the Vanunu case is studied in intelligence academies as the gold standard. The key was the slow play. Cindy did not rush him to bed. She did not rush him to Rome. She built the relationship over days. She established emotional intimacy before physical intimacy. This created a bond of trust that blinded Vanunu to the red flags. When she suggested the trip, it didn't feel like a sudden deviation. It felt like the natural progression of a budding romance. The Mossad psychologists had predicted that Vanunu, in his state of high anxiety, would latch onto a savior figure. Cindy became that savior. She offered an escape from the paranoia of London. She offered a haven. The brilliance of the trap was that it used Vanunu's own desire for safety against him. He walked into the lion's den because he thought it was a sanctuary. The logistics of the extraction from Rome required coordination between the Kaidan unit, the assassination and kidnapping specialists, and the naval unit. The location of the safe house in Rome had to be selected carefully, close enough to the city center to be plausible for a tourist, but accessible enough for a vehicle to pick up a sick man without drawing a crowd. The route to the coast had to be scouted for police checkpoints. The timing of the boat transfer was dictated by the moon and the tides. The INS Noga had to loiter in international waters, looking like a commercial vessel broadcasting innocuous radio traffic. while its radar operators scanned for Italian Coast Guard patrols. The handover at sea is a critical vulnerability. If the Italian Navy had intercepted the speedboat, it would have been an act of war. Armed Israeli agents with a kidnapped civilian in Italian waters? The diplomatic fallout would have brought down the government. The margin for error was zero. The sea was calm that night. The transfer took minutes. Vanunu was hoisted aboard, and the Noga turned its transponder off, or switched identities, and vanished into the darkness. Post-kidnapping, the disinformation campaign began. Israel needed to buy time before admitting they had him. They needed the world to think Vanunu might have gone into hiding on his own, or been taken by another group. This confusion dampened the initial outcry. By the time the hijacked photo appeared, the new reality had set in. Vanunu was in Israel, and he wasn't coming out. The legal system was bent to accommodate the intelligence reality. The trial was a formality. The judges were cleared for top-secret information. The evidence was the photos themselves. Vanunu's defense, that he acted in the public interest to prevent a nuclear holocaust, was dismissed. In the eyes of the court, he was a traitor who had violated his oath of secrecy. The sentence was designed to bury him. The solitary confinement was designed to erase him. But the paradox of the Vanunu affair is that the harder Israel tried to silence him, the louder his story became. The kidnapping legitimized the photos. If the photos were fake, why kidnap the man? If the facility was a textile factory, as officially claimed, why drug him and drag him across the Mediterranean? The operation confirmed the bomb's existence more effectively than any official press release could have. The psychological toll on the agents involved is rarely discussed. Cheryl Bentov, Cindy, had to live with the deception. She spent days gaining the trust of a man she knew was doomed. She had to laugh, hold hands, and look into the eyes of a man she was leading to the slaughter. Intelligence officers are trained to compartmentalize, to view the target as an object, a threat, not a human. But the intimacy of the honey trap makes this difficult. After the mission, Bentov returned to her life in Florida. She was a hero in the Mossad, but a villain in the press. When her identity was revealed, she faced public scorn. Her home was besieged by reporters. The line between patriot and predator is thin, and she walked it. For Vanunu, the betrayal by Cindy was the deepest wound. In his letters from prison, he expressed not just anger at the state, but a profound personal hurt. He had fallen in love, and that love was a weapon manufactured in a briefing room in Tel Aviv. The technological aspect of the surveillance in London deserves attention. The Mossad agents had to track Vanunu without being spotted by him, an amateur, or by British MI5, professionals who monitor foreign agents. London was a playground for spies in the 80s. The Russians, the Americans, the Israelis, the Arabs. Everyone was watching everyone. The Mossad team used floating box surveillance. They didn't tail him in a straight line. They had agents positioned at parallel streets, at intersections, handing off visual control from one to another. They used change of clothes, different vehicles. They monitored the payphones he used. They intercepted his mail. It was a total information dominance operation. They knew what he ate, when he slept, and crucially, when his resolve was weakening. They struck at the exact moment of maximum vulnerability. The aftermath creates a long shadow. The Vanunu case changed how media handles whistleblowers. It changed how nuclear facilities screen employees. It changed the rules of engagement for extraterritorial operations. It stands as a stark reminder of the lengths a state will go to preserve its existential deterrent. The Samson option, the theory that Israel would use nuclear weapons if the state was about to be overrun, relies on the world believing the weapons exist. Vanunu proved they exist. In a twisted way, he strengthened the very policy he tried to dismantle. He wanted to disarm Israel. Instead, he gave its enemies proof of the iron wall they faced. The irony is tragic. The man who wanted peace became the messenger of the ultimate weapon. Even today, the ghost of the operation lingers. When a scientist dies in Tehran or a computer virus destroys centrifuges in Natanz, the world looks to the Mossad and remembers the man in the taxi in Rome. They remember that the reach is long, the memory is infinite, and the methods are ruthless. The story of the honey trap is not just history. It is a playbook that is still open, still being read, and potentially still being used. The names change, the cities change, but the game remains the same. A secret, a leak, a trap, and in the end, a silence. The silence of the desert. The silence of the cell. The silence of the sea. The operational security failures that allowed Vanunu to take the photos in the first place led to a massive overhaul of the Shin Bet, Israel's internal security service. How could a man with radical student politics, who had openly expressed pro-Palestinian views at university, retain a top-secret clearance? The vetting process had failed. Vanunu was a walking red flag. He had brought a backpack into the control room. He had been left unsupervised. The hubris of the security establishment was their undoing. They believed their own myth of invincibility. They didn't think an insider would turn. They assumed loyalty. Vanunu shattered that assumption. After him, the two-person rule was strictly enforced. No one enters the core alone. Bags are X-rayed. Background checks are continuous. The system tightened, becoming a suffocating net, all because one technician decided that the world had a right to know. The role of the British intelligence services remains ambiguous. Did MI5 know Vanunu was being tracked? Did they turn a blind eye to let the Mossad solve a problem that was becoming a headache for Thatcher? The Sunday Times lawyers had contacted the British government before publication to verify the story. The government knew Vanunu was the source. It is plausible that a nod and a wink occurred between London and Tel Aviv. We won't stop you, just don't leave a mess. The fact that Vanunu was allowed to leave the country so easily, despite being a person of interest, suggests that the British were happy to see him go. If he was kidnapped in Rome, it was Italy's problem, not theirs. This geopolitical cynicism is the bedrock upon which the operation was built. Vanunu was a pawn sacrificed by all sides to maintain the equilibrium. Let's zoom in on the camera again. The Pentax K1000, a mechanical workhorse. No batteries required for the shutter to fire. This was crucial. If the battery had died, history would be different. The tactile clunk of the mirror slapping up, the manual rewind crank. These physical sensations are burned into Vanunu's memory. The smell of the film emulsion, the cold metal of the lens. In the digital age, information is fluid, easily copied, easily deleted. In 1985, information was physical. It was silver halide crystals on a strip of plastic. It had weight. It had to be carried. The physicality of the theft made it visceral. He wasn't hacking a server. He was stealing the light reflected off the secrets. The final twist is the longevity of the secret. Despite the photos, despite the prison sentence, Israel still has not officially admitted to having nuclear weapons. The policy of opacity holds. The official line is, Israel will not be the first country to introduce nuclear weapons to the Middle East. It is a masterpiece of diplomatic semantics. Everyone knows, but no one speaks. Vanunu screamed the truth, and the state simply absorbed the scream and continued its silence. The wall of silence is stronger than the truth. This is the ultimate lesson of the Vanunu affair. Facts do not always change reality. Power changes reality, and power resides in the shadows, waiting with a syringe and a boat. The story serves as a dark parable for the modern age of leaks. Snowden, Manning, Assange. They all walk in the footsteps of the man from Dimona. They all face the machinery of the state, and they all learn that the state does not forgive. The desert wind blows over the Dimona reactor, scrubbing away the footprints. But the story is etched in the bedrock, radioactive and glowing in the dark. The script ends here, but the file remains open. Top secret, eyes only, forever.